Welcome to Conversations in Mind. This is a space for conscious inquiry, where metaphysics, new thought, and the science of mind meet real life. In a world calling for deeper awareness, we explore the nature of consciousness, the power of thought, and the presence of spirit moving through everyday experience. And now, here are your hosts, Barb Bue and Mark Gilbert.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Conversations in Mind, where we ask the question, what if your mind is more than just a collection of thoughts? And what if it is actually a gateway to a whole new way of living? I am Reverend Barbara. I'm joined by my friend and fellow minister, Reverend Mark Gilbert. And we come together every week to seek to demystify the study of new thought and dive deep into the science and soul of consciousness. And so if you're a longtime seeker or curious about the power of your own perspective, you're very welcome here. And we started talking about a concept of God, or how do we redefine God for a modern audience without losing a personal relationship. And we didn't talk about it other than to call it as a topic, but I think you and I are going to come at this from pretty different places, actually. This might be one where we come at it from pretty different places. So
I don't know. I think there'll be a lot of overlap, and I really like the tail going in front of your face there. As you were doing.
Sorry. Gracie, sorry, y'all. Gracie the cat is a little clingy today for some reason, and if you're a cat owner, you know that sometimes you just got to go with that. So
yeah,
taking care of it.
You know, Barb, I think this question, it gets at something that I've often heard as a criticism of new thought and science of mind in particular, is that it can be overly heady and not enough heart-filled. And to that degree, because we teach a type of God that is not the old style God, you know, if we look at the traditional God that's understood by a lot of people, it's the old man in the sky, the Sistine Chapel. He's holding his hand out. Because it's an other, there is a relationship that can be built with that other. And when we move off of that old man in the sky God to an infinite power and presence and intelligence that is flowing through everything, and that it's in us and it's in the world and it transcends the world, sometimes in there, the relationship with that divine essence is not stressed enough. Whereas I think a lot of religions, you know, you can look at Christian religions, and they often are talking about that personal relationship. In fact, Christianity, by the very nature that they have they see Jesus as God, you know, and of course, New Thought teaches Jesus as a great teacher, but not an exception to he is showing what we all have. But if you look at him as an exception, then he's God personified that you can have a relationship with. So I think there's a lot of people who develop a sort of an interest in having a spiritual essence that is filled with that feeling of relationship. Just like you and I are in relationship right now, we want God to be something that we can relate to in a relationship kind of way as an other, in a sense. Yeah. And I think sometimes that's lacking in how it's presented. I don't think it's lacking totally. I want to be very clear. And I think we'll get into some of the ways I think New Thought does do that. But I think there is an opening for New Thought to see how we might develop that.
As I was thinking about this week, what the phrase personal and the personal impersonal, or the impersonal personal, I think it's the impersonal personal kept coming up, you know, in terms of I feel like we took this human beings took this idea, deity, that was needed in its time and space, and turned it into a man, because that's the thing that we see as we see other human beings as our relationship partners, and we don't see energy as a relationship. We don't see a spiritual field as a relationship. Like, it's hard to imagine that, but I have to say that's where I live, is that there is a personal relationship with an energy and feeling, not with a being that represents humans. And in doing that, I mean, we applied our own biases to God also, because it's really easy to do that when it looks like a human. I think, then it has the same bias that you do, and the same dislikes that you do, and the same likes that you do, and the same rules and all that stuff. So, I feel like there's a space for relationship that is an energetic field and a feeling that is not tied to something that is in human form.
Yeah. And I think it's easier if something is in human form for us to imagine and sense and feel that relationship. When we're feeling we're in communion with something else, we're so used to the communion with other humans that it's easier for us to bridge that difference into a divine that we can put a face to, that we can put a human aspect to it, that we can, create God in our own image, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that we can feel like we've got a relationship with it. And I think that then when you move to a God or spirit or the all that is energy, flowing love, intelligence, permeates everything, gives birth to the evolutionary force, gives birth to the creative force within us. This sort of nebulous thing is it's not quite as easy to feel that loving sense of an other with it. It's not impossible, though, because I know that I've developed it, and I can hear in your statement that you have too. And I think most people who really get deep in New Thought and science of mind can develop that thou relationship with a non-humanesque divine.
Yes. And it includes being in relationship with oneself and with our own inner wisdom and our own inner, call it guidance system, or a sense of, really it's a sense of connection, probably more than anything else. And so to call a sense of connection a relationship is probably a stretch for some people. And it's hard to succinctly describe in an advertisement, right? I mean, we talked about, like, how does this apply? How do we language this for a modern audience or even for a younger audience? And honestly, I think the younger people get it more than we do for the most part. But for this is not a half a sentence radio ad, right? For a relationship. And I think that's where the Christian God, the Muslim God, that there is a patriarchal being who holds the rules and holds the lines and tells you how to live and what's right and what's wrong. And we actually really don't have that, and maybe that's a part of the conversation about the personal and the impersonal of this is being in a place of not needing or wanting a God who defines the rules or defines the box that you're supposed to exist within to be a good person.
Yeah. And I think much training in New Thought and Science of Mind, when people are coming out of the traditional Christianity, there's a lot of retraining that's done to say, no, God is different. God is this thing as we've been describing for the last few minutes. And then the emphasis becomes on, and God is within you, and God is in everything. And so there's a real easy way for us to go, oh, the world and everything I look at, this is God, this is spirit, this is the all. Oh, it's in me. And so you end up with sort of like, it's in me, it's out here. It's in me, it's out here. And what we get at, and many people have noted this, that in the relationships with God, there's three different ways it can be looked at. There is the first person God, which is within us. So the fact that I can sense God or the spirit within me, I have that sense of that relationship with myself as God. And then when I look at the external world as God, that's God in the third person, the great it out there that is God, and I can be in relationship. But then there's a second person where we always talk in the relationship between me and thou. And it's in second person that we put that relationship between the two-ness into a form. So it's first, second, and third person. And so the second person aspect of the relationship is often overlooked. First person is in me. We stress it. Third person's out there, but we drop sort of like the relationship of me with the other. And so that second person relationship is often discounted or not stressed as well as it could be in New Thought. And I think that it is in the teaching. It is in the teaching. I actually pulled some stuff out from Holmes earlier, looking at it, because being a student of him, I do know he writes about a lot of that. But I think he would acknowledge and said at the end of his life that the one thing he wished he had done more was write more about love than the law. It was so much about the law, the law, the law. But he also wanted to bring the love aspect in it. And love is acknowledging that there is a relationship, a sense of feeling with some thou that is out there, and that I am in relationship with that. And there's a deep human need for relationships. Yes. And when we drop that, we drop an integral part of the importance of the spiritual path of having that sense of divine communion with a divine other.
And not other. Well, I think it gets confusing for people because, people within New Thought will start to say that I am God. And they're still picturing this all powerful, all angry, all making the rules being, and saying that, and hearing somebody say that I am that. And that's not it at all.
Right.
It is the loving presence. It is the presence of love on the planet. And I think, Holmes, yes, I know that he talked about that in his later life, but I also think that, he came in at a time and a place, and historically in the thought growth of the United States, particularly, his message was on point because people were just shifting out of that angry, personal, angry God situation and trying to embrace something fuller. And the law, which was you can manage your life, to a lot of people that didn't feel like they had control of their life, really made a difference. Mm-hmm. And so it's like you had to start there in a way with the law, because the law is what made sense for people. And then and I think that's still true. Like you learn that's the early stage, right? You learn you can manage your own life and you can do this thing of thought creates, but then thought creates this relationship, and all of that is with us in the stream of it and with it and part of it, not as a separate being. And again, that none of that fits on a postage stamp. So,
well, you're very true from a historical standpoint that most New Thought came out of the mental mind control aspects of the late 1800s, with the power of creating prosperity through your thinking. And so the two of those got married together, and a lot of it as it turned away from Christianity and other faiths, and it went towards trying to be more scientific and logical in its approach, which meant drop a lot of the for lack of a better word, flowery language of religions, and bring more logic and order to a statement of how you can live a more manageable life that's abundant and prosperous.
Well, early New Thought actually encompassed those Christian beliefs of the God out there, and that you could then create your life with your thinking, and that it was supported by this entity being. But the move, I would say the move through the more fundamental Christian beliefs and concepts had to happen slowly, and it's unfolded in really interesting ways. We're everywhere. This thinking is everywhere, and there's still a lot of Christian thought.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the faiths that are growing people these days, they're ones where people are looking for a personal experience of the divine. And we've talked about this in prior episodes.
Yeah.
And in that personal experience, that includes not only feeling it within you and seeing it without you, but also that intersection between you and the greater it, so that you understand and feel God. And so spiritual practices that open you to a visceral sense of a relationship with something greater than yourself is a feeling that I think that we're all called to as these spiritual beings have moving through this human experience. We want that kind of communion type relationship, and if you look at some of the people like Hafiz and Rumi and their love poems, they're obvious examples of language that resonates with a lot of people in New Thought because they speak to that beloved nature. That when we talk about the love of God or spirit or the all, it's the beloved. It is this essence that we know that has given us this gift of our lives.
Right, exactly.
A gratitude for that and a blessing for it.
Yeah.
And we feel the love flowing into us and flowing out of us. And so the relationships we feel with our friends and other people, our significant other, our pets, when we feel that love flow through us, we can also take that and sense there's a greater sense of something that is given the gift of this existence that we can feel a love for as well. And so many people write about that as the great thou, the beloved,
yes,
and use language of that nature.
And even the Christian mystics did that. Teresa of Avila comes to mind right off the bat. Like, she had a love affair essentially with her idea of God at the time. And I think that is still, I think that's the thing, is like when we start to talk about this, it starts to feel like you can't have that feeling / relationship. And I have done this whole gamut of in relationship without, like, calling it God, calling it spirit, I think we've all done this at some level, mm-hmm. right? You kind of have to, and it circles around, and in my life, it's come around in several different ways, but really landed in this place of there is this impersonal energy that responds to everyone. Mm-hmm. So it responds to things that I consider not great when it responds to things that I consider great, because it does not have an opinion. And I think that's where it gets hard, because we want to have a God that supports us.
Mm-hmm.
And it does. It just supports everyone. And so, like, we want it to only support the things we like. And that's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the same rules apply for everybody thought creates, right? And when you land your thinking into this field of goodness, it responds. And hopefully you're putting in goodness. More goodness, please.
So we've talked about the fact that we can sense there's a movement from the external old sky God to the God within us, but don't get locked on the fact that you're God, that you are an aspect of God, an individualized expression of that one God. So you're not the only God. You are part of the greater God, and that because we are, everything is God, and that includes us, and that God is moving through us. What we often and can call ourselves to speak more to is, how do we bring that relationship aspect in? What is it that we can do in New Thought that can stress the fact that there is this sense of a relationship with the beloved infinite? Are there things that we can do?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think those are the things that actually require spiritual practice and commitment and effort. Like, it's not, especially at first, I don't think it's on autopilot. Like, it's not built in our nature to have it on autopilot, unfortunately. I mean, maybe when we're little, when we're, infants, it is. And we know our connection. We don't even know our own separation when we're born, right? That's the thing. We learn to separate, and then we have to work to connect. And so I think those basic spiritual practices are the things. Meditation is key to this. Sitting in quiet and stillness, and in the desire for connection, so that desire can be met with the equal energy, which will come through and come back, Yeah,
Barb, you've said in prior episodes that you've often thought there could be more heart-centered approaches to science of mind and New Thought. And, and for my book, it would seem that we can move from the head to the heart.
Easily.
And there's any practice that we do that moves us out of seeing this as a heady philosophy into a a reality that's viscerally felt in the heart is something that we can cultivate. Now, how do you go about cultivating heart-centered energy? If I can put you on the spot there, what are the spiritual practices?
Heart-centered energy. But before we do heart-centered energy, do we need to talk about New Thought Media Network?
Oh, okay. Well, let's give a little heart-centered energy to the New Thought Media Network.
Yeah. And then I'm happy to come back to that.
Okay. Well, let's remind everybody that this program comes to you through the graces of the New Thought Media Network, and it's a nonprofit, and we hope that you support it. We're going to show you a brief commercial, and then I'll say more right after the commercial comes back.
We hope you're enjoying Conversations in Mind. This program is made possible by the New Thought Media Network, a nonprofit that's supporting conscious, spiritual media. If you'd like to support this work, just scan the QR code to make a donation. It lets the network know you like this show and helps them to continue bringing you this type of content. You can also go to ntmedia.org and click on Donate. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Now, back to the show.
So we encourage you to donate whatever amount you can to the New Thought Media Network to support not only this program, but all the programs that are put out by the network. Again, it's a nonprofit, and the money that's designated and that with that QR code sort of says, hey, and we like this Conversations in Mind program with Barb and Mark. And so it lets them know that as well. I'd also add, drop us a like, a comment, a share, do whatever you can do in the social media stuff, and however you're watching this video, use the usual ways. Do that and support us through likes and shares and letting your friends and family know about this program. And let us know topics you'd like us to discuss in the future as well.
Yeah, we're game for all kinds of things. So finding the heart-centered space, it's interesting because I know that in my life I had become pretty heady, and part of that was the work I was doing. Part of that was exhaustion and all kinds. There were all kinds of things that lent itself to that, and then I had my heart broken pretty heavily, and I made a conscious choice not to close up from that. It was a place where I could have just gone, you know what, enough of all of it, and I'm just going to be in a shell. And in doing that, I got back into some spiritual practice, including sitting with a notebook and writing down things I'm grateful for, staring at the leaves outside my window, like spending some time actually allowing myself to open to the idea of joy. And I think that those things, like looking for joy and awe-inspiringness, which is all around when we look for it, brings us that sense of being part of something so much larger than ourselves, because we could not create those things and we could not experience them without them coming from, through, as something else. Mm-hmm. And we just allow ourselves to have that feeling and not think it away, to make space for the cat when she gets in my face, because that's what she needs today, and it's good practice. Here she is. She wants to be loved right now. And I get to put aside what I'm doing and love her right now, because this is where she is, right? And I can't tell her to come back in 20 minutes because she doesn't really have a clock, and so, and sitting, just being still and quiet. We have to unplug and give ourselves 5 minutes to just be still and quiet. But for me, I think that's a lot of it, is just looking for the things that bring awe and wonder, and most of those things none of those things are on Facebook, and none of those things are in a store, to be purchased. I mean, there are things that are wonderful in stores to be purchased. Let me reframe that. But that's not, it's not the acquisition of those things. It's the awe and wonder of them, and the creative minds behind them, and the awe and wonder of people. And even the ones who are peopling sometimes, we can find a place to love them. And when we do that, then love is reflected back to us, and we sense it as something larger than ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we can remember that it's God loving God. Everything that we're interacting with is God. If everything is one and everything is God, then every relationship we have, whether it be with our cats and dogs and animals, or whether it's with people and it's significant relationships or just people we meet in the street, we can stop in every moment and say, that's God. I'm God, that's God. This is God talking to God.
Yes.
We are in communion. And there
is wonder in that. There is wonder and goodness in all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you do it? I mean, you are pretty immersed, it seems, most of the time in this field, you know?
Well, I can confess that, you know, much of my spiritual career, if I could call it a spiritual career, it probably overemphasized the heady philosophy stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's just natural to who I was. But over time, it has become more and more heart-centered. It has become more and more listening to my intuition. I think the very nature that I can be open to Spirit's messages and seeing them as guidance and following that guidance helps develop that sense of relationship with me. You know, one thing I'll also bring up, I was thinking about this week in anticipation of this topic, and it goes to something else. I'm going to talk about science of mind, spiritual mind treatment for a minute.
Okay.
And that we have, you know, the 5 steps of treatment, which years ago I sort of realized each one of those steps is a spiritual practice in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the
Absolutely.
step 1 is where we're seeing the divine in all. What I would add to that is that is seeing God in the third person initially. You know, we can argue this, but just go with us for just a moment. But when I look out and I'm looking, you know, everything is God, everything is one. I'm sort of like looking out there. And then we go to the second step of treatment where we say, and that is within me.
Yes.
Okay. And so that both of steps 1 and 2 are really developing sort of a non-dual aspect or realization of life where you feel like everything is interconnected and that interconnection includes me and I'm part of this one ball of wax that is swirling around together. Okay. So those two build a sort of a non-duality spiritual practice, but they're also the second step brings it into a first person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I start with looking at the third person God out there or the world out there as God, but it's also in me, first person. The third step of treatment really is about stating our truths. So it's in a sense, it's like affirmations, just spiritual affirmations of what we know are our truth. So it's a spiritual practice in and of itself. And in it, we're also sort of like making having a relationship with God by stating the truth of what we're you know, seeing as manifest in our lives now, be it peace, love, harmony, etc. But in that, there is sort of a relationship with the thou as we see the truth being manifested in the statement of our truths with the divine. Step 4 is gratitude, where we give thanks. Gratitude is nothing but a second person process
True,
of relationship.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with you there. That's
and then finally, the release part is probably a first person, where I have to let go of this and just put it to the universe and know that it's going to occur. So in one sense, the treatment process is it's not only multiple spiritual practices rolled into one, but each step of it has sort of a different take when you look at it from God as first person, third person, second person. You can sort of shift through it. So maybe there's a way to build into that a greater sense, especially in step 3 in your statements of truth and realization, that you can build statements that speak to the relationship that each and every day I feel that a relationship with the divine growing in my life, that there's this personal relationship with God and spirit that fills my life with love and harmony and peace and energy, that you focus consciously on the development of that sense of a relationship with it. And the treatment itself can be a form of developing that relationship within your awareness and letting it manifest in your life. So, and then one other thought about a treatment is that sometimes most good treatments end with a moment of silence in my mind. They end with sort of like, you know, and sometimes we just immediately go into talking.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're out of it. But, you know, I think as spiritual practitioners, if we do a spiritual mind treatment, I think we can stop at the very end, and after we do the release, we can take a moment and just feel the relationship with God. Take a moment to be in spirit, in divine communion with the greater thou, and build that into the essence of the treatment process for ourselves, so that it can also sort of cultivate more and more of the sense of the thou. And this is something I have started to work with. I won't say I've gone very far with it, because this topic this week really just sort of developed it for me. And while, before I get off my soapbox here for a moment, Barbara.
No, you're good. You're good. This is all good.
Another process that's often taught in Science of Mind classes is visioning. And visioning to me is it's an alter ego to Science of Mind treatment, spiritual mind treatment. In spiritual mind treatment, I often think of it as we are in a sense speaking our truths into the divine.
And directing in a way.
Yeah, and directing it. It's sort of from us to thou. Yeah. And in the sense, visioning is often, we've stated some questions and we're listening. So it's more from the thou to me, that we're waiting to, by listening to the aspects of the divine and gather what we get through visioning, it's more of a receptive nature. There's a way we can actually create a spiritual practice that's much like, spiritual writing, where you ask a question and then wait and listen and have automatic writing. Mm-hmm. And see that as a dialogue with God, much like Neil Donald Walsh did with his Conversation with God books. Right. It's a model. Yeah. It's simply opening yourself and connecting to the divine, and then cultivating a sort of like two-way relationship of dialogue with God. And it can be through just, what is it that I need to know in this moment kind of question, and be open to the messages that are coming, and build that as a spiritual practice of having a communion with the divine that's continuously giving you intuitive messages that can help you in manifesting the greatest life.
Well, and I think we can do that without even in moments. Like we don't have to always do it as like some formal sit down, be still practice. It can be in moments. It can be, standing cooking dinner, when you just listen for a moment inside and think about, who am I feeding? Where did this come from? Who am I feeding? What feeling do I want to impart upon this action of cooking? And we can do that with anything and everything. We forget. I'm certainly not doing. I'm making this up as I go along. This is not a practice that I have. It's a lovely. It sounds like a great idea, though, now that I've said it out loud. But I think
we'll call this episode "Mark and Barb come up with new creative spiritual processes for them to practice."
Yeah, right. Another thing to add to our list. No, but that's an interesting train. Like as my brain goes down on the train, which I will not continue to rhyme through the rest of the program, I promise. Is what we bring to anything is what we, what we bring to anything is what we bring to everything. And what we bring to anything is what comes back to us within anything. So that can be true of taking out the garbage, and it can be true of conversation online. It can be true of ignoring conversation online, which might be the bigger practice at this point. But I think the relationship with God / spirit / the force, which, is my favorite word still again, is really dependent on our willingness and wantingness to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And really, because it is not a being that is going to impart itself on top of us and say, hey, here, feel this. Well, it might, you'll get that, but really, if we want it, we have to be open to it. And then we have to take action. It's like everything else. We just have to take action. Right?
I want to stress something you said a second ago, which is that we can do it in everyday life. Because a lot of times when we think about spiritual practices, or you think about the ones I outlined a moment ago, you would think, oh, I got to go set some time aside, get in a quiet room, blah, blah, blah. And
First thing in the morning, I'm going to
yeah.
20 minutes.
But we often talk about things where if gratitude in and of itself is a standalone practice, and we know it is because so many people value and gratitude journaling at night, why not work that step of gratitude into our lives and every day as we're walking around? Can we feel and cultivate a sense of gratitude? And when you feel gratitude, what are you feeling thanks for? You're feeling, thank you, Spirit, for creating this mechanism for Barb and I to communicate today.
Right.
For the internet so that we can share our thoughts broadly across the world. Thank you, Spirit, for the ability to have a healthy body where I can walk around in this third dimension. There are so many things that we can stop and give thanks for in every moment. And that very point of stopping and saying thank you is a relationship to a greater something that's gifted us this experience. And we can begin cultivating in small moments that beloved experience.
Yes. While remembering that it is there for everyone and that you are not singled out as some
Exception.
Only exception. Only you get this. Only you get this, Mark. You can have this life and no one else can, because that's not how it works. And unfortunately, I think that whatever's happening in the world these days has us all like sort of worried about what's ours. And we're forgetting that everything is everyone's. And that when we do that, then it expands for everyone, which includes us, right?
Yeah, it's real easy for us to get locked on the fact that we see so many people who have forgotten that and are being selfish and power hungry and money hungry these days. And there's a sense that we have healthy boundaries and don't be run over, but we don't have to turn into greedy, money-loving, narcissistic people ourselves to counterbalance what we see in the world. We have to hold true to our principles and see the life as a blessing. Even the things that we're experiencing, we don't have to give in to them, but we can see them, acknowledge that that's where that person is. It's where those people are. That's something that we're having to go through. We've talked about this in prior episodes, but we can also feel a sense of gratitude for our life and our existence and the friends in our life and anything that we have that we know that we can give thanks for. There's blessings around us. If we focus our energy on the people who are greedy and money hungry and the crap of the world, then it's allowing us to forget the blessings that are truly ours. And they say what we resist persists. If we do that, we focus on it, we get more of it. We tend to see more of it.
We see more and more and more of it, and we find it harder and harder to unplug from it. And really, it's it doesn't take much to unplug from it. Like, we can look across the table at someone we love and go, okay, this is the most important thing, and not all that. And then do whatever we're called to do to repair what's been happening, and repair what needs to be repaired as the world moves forward. But we'll know it when it's ours, and in the meantime, I believe we have to continue to find ways to love one another. And it's not easy. It's not always easy. It's never easy, honestly. Because when it gets easy, then something bigger comes along to challenge us. I don't know why that is, but
yeah, we got to stay anchored in love.
Yeah,
and
that's the relationship. The relationship is with love and loving presence, and so back to our original thing is how do we have a personal relationship? We create it. It's like any other relationship. We create it. We work at it. We stay focused on it and give it our attention and our time and our love. And then it comes back to us that way.
Yeah, when we talk about the beloved, we can also break that word down and be loved.
Right.
Yeah, and it's an opening for us not only to give of our feeling, a sense of love flowing through us, but to be a receptive for the love that's being given to us. God speaks through so many ways, the love of our friends and everything, our animals. Love is around us. If we're open as a conduit to receiving love, then we can start enjoying the love that we're getting, and then we have a desire to bring that back and keep the flow of love going. And the more that we do that, the more we create the beloved here on earth. Barbara, one of the things I wanted to share was I went to this.
Oh, you pulled it out this week. I pulled it out last week. Okay. Is it the glossary or something else?
No. It's an area of the book that I skip over so much. The meditations.
Oh.
Meditations. Man, I tell you, it's part 6 of the Science of Mind textbook for those of you who are Alms fans. But I did a word search on my electronic version of the Science of Mind textbook, and I searched for thou, THOU, not thinking that was part of the word thought. And so it showed up like,
right.
But I also searched on thou art.
Yes.
So thou art narrowed it down. And I found that a lot of the phrases where he would use that were in some of the meditations. And which took me into looking at the meditations and going, a lot of these are really very good.
I haven't looked at the meditations in like 20 years, probably.
That's why I've got to bring this out, and I'm only going to read one, but I found a bunch of them that really cultivated that feeling of a relationship with God. And so this one's called The Circle is Complete. It's on 513 for you people who like page numbers. And I'm just going to read it real quickly.
Yeah.
The circle of love is complete. It comprehends all, includes all, and binds all together with cords of everlasting unity. I cannot depart from its presence, nor wander from its care. My love is complete within me. The love of God binds me to itself and will not let me go. I shall make a home for you, O my wonderful love, and we shall journey through life hand in hand. I shall sit in your presence and learn the wondrous things you will tell me, for you are God.
Well, that's beautiful. Wow. Okay.
So that's earnest on cultivating a relationship with that second person divine, and there's more in there like that. So if you are like me and have not looked at the meditations in a while, there are some in there.
Yeah, that was really beautiful, actually. And it's so funny because, he thought he was everybody thinks he was so heady. And then we forget these little bits and pieces where that was not the case at all. Yeah. Wow. I feel kind of complete.
Yeah. I thought one thing we didn't get into, and we're not going to, is maybe this is the future, but how would we do this in communities? How would we bring heart-centered relationships, and what can our spiritual centers do? And maybe it was inherent in some of the spiritual practice, and maybe just heightening the awareness of this desire to cultivate that relationship with the beloved. But we didn't get into specific things for communities, and maybe that's something people can think about. And if they would like to see something on that, right, leave us a note.
Leave us a note, or leave us a note about how you feel like that's happening in your community, and so that we can share it with other people, other ministers, and other communities around the country. I mean, we know a lot of people between us. So, well, thank you, Mark. You know what? I thought this was going to be a headier conversation, and this turned out to be a very lovely, not heady conversation. So I feel really filled up by it. Thank you.
Thank you. Me too. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and we're hoping you're enjoying these conversations in mind. Take care.
Take care.